It is time for my Championship predictions early edition. I will be doing a final version of this at the end of the month, probably the day before the season starts, just like I did last week with the Premier League. Go and check that out if you haven't seen it already. Be an iCard there if you haven't, seen it. So yeah, but I'll be doing a final version of the Premier League as well before that starts. But this is the Championship version. It's very, very, very strange doing this without Nottingham Forest in it, and it's just weird. I support a Premier League team now, so yeah, it's kind of irrelevant, this division, really. First place, shock of the century, Norwich City. Yeah, I may as well move on. I don't really need to add any more than that, do I? They walk the league every single time. Dean Smith, great manager at this level. Isaac Hayden, great signing. They probably need a few more, but ultimately, the Norwich, genuinely, not a professional, that explanation. But they walk the league every time. I don't think I need to go into much detail, really. I will go into a lot more detail with this next team, though. Joining them in automatic promotion spots, I'm going to put Burnley. Vincent Kompany is a really interesting replacement for Sean Dyche. Obviously, a bit of an unknown manager when it comes to England. He's been in Belgium the last few years with Anderlecht, but ultimately, how is he going to adapt to managing in the Championship in particular? A very, very difficult league to come into as a manager. Unless you're Steve Cooper, that's dead easy, of course, if you're him. They have lost quite a big core group of players, the likes of Ben Mee, Tarkowski, Pope. That's basically 3 of their star assets, all in their defence, that have gone. But they still have some great players. If they can hold on to Maxwell Cornet, then that's an absolute coup. However, he is currently being linked with Chelsea. Looks like Wout Weghorst is going to be going over to Turkey to play for Besiktas. That's not really a shock. But I like the fact that the players they have got rid of, besides the ones that I mentioned, they're 30 plus, or they're near 30, or they're just not good enough, and they're replacing them with young players, even players that probably won't play immediately. Scott Twine, excellent signing. Howard Bellis on loan from Man City as well. I think they'll do very well this season. Next team then, let's go for one in mid-table. Let's go for Blackburn. That might be a bit of a shock actually that I put them that low, but hear me out. They've lost Joe Rothwell, Bradley Johnson, Lenaher, and then Ryan Giles is obviously a low knee. They've all gone, and then when you realise that they might lose Ben Brereton potentially, he's obviously going to be linked with lots of different moves. And then when you realise that the manager has never managed in England before, his only ever experience of English football was when he played for Newcastle. I don't think that's that encouraging, quite frankly. He signed a 3-year deal, and his last club at Malmo, he won the Swedish league both times, but that's not that difficult at Malmo. I can't help but feel like they're going to drop off a little bit after having what was ultimately quite a good season last time out. Let's go for another team that's going to survive, and this decision was influenced quite heavily by one thing happening: their manager leaving. Blackpool. I think Blackpool are going to struggle because they've lost Neil Critchley, who ultimately has gone to a bigger club but to do a lesser role. So I'm not sure if that is actually an upgrade, quite frankly. They kind of petered out at the end of last season, and ultimately, like I say, losing Critchley is absolutely gigantic. And really, Michael Appleton doesn't really strike me as the ideal replacement. He did very well with Lincoln in 2020-21, but last season Lincoln dropped off significantly. So I don't really think that is what you call that encouraging. And then really to top it all off, they haven't signed any players yet. Let's go for a team that will be pushing for the playoffs, in my opinion. I think we'll go for Luton. I don't think they're going to be doing quite as well as they did last season. I don't see them dropping off completely in Italy. Losing Kyle Naismith to Bristol City was an incredibly random and strange transfer, given the fact he was a very, very important part of their team last season. But bringing in Colin Woodrow, and particularly even Horvath, I wonder why I say that, not at all biased, but in general, excellent goalkeeper. That is a fantastic signing. Coventry, I think it'll be more the same, to be honest. I don't really think they're going to drop off or really go up a huge amount. They might be a bit higher. Only signing they've made so far is Casey Palmer, who got very little game time last season at Bristol City. But I do think they've got, again, a very good foundation there at Coventry. O'Hare, Hamer and Gokares are still at the club. O'Hare signed a new deal a few months ago, which was obviously gigantic for them. And I do think under Mark Robbins, they're definitely heading in the right direction. So I think it'll be more the same for Coventry. We'll do a relegated team in a moment, but I want to do another team that's going to survive. And this was really difficult to put them this low, because I feel they probably could finish higher. So I'm going to go for Hull. Hull have got a really exciting future with their new ownership, the signings they've made, getting Nathan Baxter back from Chelsea, as well as bringing in Tufan from Fenerbahce for 2.7 million. I think that money being spent there is a big sign of where they want to take the clubs. And ultimately, they've also signed Figueiredo, who I think is an incredible signing for a team like Hull. However, one of the reasons why I'm not really going to upgrade them too much is losing Tom Eaves is a massive loss. And then also, really, when you realise that George Honeyman has gone to Millwall and Keane Lewis Potter is most likely going to go to Brentford, that is 3 pretty massive losses. So I don't think this new ownership under Hull is really going to set the world alight just yet. Reading. Awful team, and they were incredibly lucky that they survived last season. Joe Lumley doesn't strike me with much ambition or belief, quite frankly, in between the sticks. They have lost John Swift, Rick and Mortar, I probably said that slightly wrong, as well as John Swift, all for nothing. That's 3 key assets that have gone out the door for nothing. And also, when you realise the season starts in how many weeks? About 3 weeks. They've got 17 players in their first team. Back to mid-table, Cardiff City. They've made a lot of transfers. They've signed 9 players already. Also getting rid of a lot of those players for free, actually, in both senses, leaving and coming in. I mean, Rick and Mortar, as I just mentioned, O'Dowan from Bristol, obviously their rivals, or one of their rivals. Allsop from Derby, some random club, I don't know who they are. This is the thing when you sign loads of players, much to Forest's expense in the past. Will they gel together that quickly? And ultimately, they didn't do very well last season, so it would be a bit foolish for me to just put them like into the playoffs. Birmingham, the time has come. The time has come, I'm afraid, Birmingham fans. And quite frankly, for Reading as well, both of you, both Reading and Birmingham, relegation has been coming for you the last several years. Year after year of poor management, of poor recruitment is catching up on you. Especially Birmingham, quite frankly, because again, an incredibly small squad, only 18 players in there. They can't afford to pay players' wages. They've had countless protests in and outside the ground last season in particular. Their new manager, John Eustace, has only ever been a manager between 2016 and 18. Of Kidderminster. He was also the assistant at Ireland and QPR, so I don't really think that's encouraging, but we'll have to wait and see. Middlesbrough, I think Borough are heading in the right direction 100% under, what's his name? Chris Wilder. But they've got a great team ultimately on paper. They're signing some great players, like I mentioned already. Lenaher and Giles have now gone to Middlesbrough, which is excellent. Strengthening an already good defence, and they are going to need a few more players given the fact they've lost 11 players and a right back that they used to have that they actually do have, but they're not going to play him. Can't remember what his name is. I'm sure he's pretty good. They're going to get about 20 million for him for nothing, so that's pretty funny, and it's going to be very, very useful for them as well going forward. Let's do another team in the top 6. Huddersfield. I think they'll get it again. Like, they're probably going to lose Toffolo and O'Brien to a few teams being linked with them, but one of them in particular may be getting them. I do think that'll be a massive loss, obviously, but ultimately they've got a good team, they've got a good manager, and I don't think they're going to just completely tank down to being a relegation team again. But ultimately, I think they'll do alright. They do need some players to come in. The only player they've signed so far is Will Boyle from Cheltenham, which doesn't sound that encouraging. However, we'll have to give them a chance, and I do think they'll do alright again. Next up, we'll do West Brom. It's a very, very weird situation with West Brom. Let's just say it this way. Crap manager, great team. If they get rid of the manager, they'll probably get top 6. Steve Bruce is an awful manager, I'm sorry. He just is. Doesn't strike me with any kind of inspiration. Certainly not nowadays anyway. He might have had a bit of success down the years, but ultimately not so much now. And yeah, it just screams mediocrity. They need a new manager to fit what is a pretty good team. Getting in John Swift and Jed Wallace is brilliant for free. They've already had some good players in there. Next up then, Sunderland. I could put them higher than that. I feel like a lot of people think Sunderland are going to do a lot better than just survive, but I don't think they're going to just get playoffs immediately. I don't see them doing that. So I do think, the feel-good factor of being back in the Championship will be huge. Massive stadium. They're going to be getting quite a lot of fans, a lot more than when they were last in the Championship, when things were really, really quite dreadful for Sunderland. And Alex Neil's a great manager at this level. They have got some great players in there. I think they'll have enough, at the very least, to survive. I don't see them going back down. I really don't. I think they'll definitely survive. And just hear this from me, I may be putting them in survival, but I think they will potentially finish higher, maybe. Let's do QPR. I think QPR will be again near the playoffs. Bit of an interesting appointment with Michael Beale coming in as the manager from Aston Villa's coaching setup. 8 players have gone out. They've got in Jack Clark-Slater from Chelsea permanently. He's finally found a new home. And, he was at Coventry last season. He did well there. But they desperately need to sign a new striker, because the only real out-and-out striker that's good enough is Lyndon Dykes. They haven't got Charlie Austin anymore. They haven't got Andre Gray either. So they definitely need to sign a new striker at the very least. So if they do that, I think they'll do all right. Let's put someone else in the mid-table. I think Swansea, in my opinion. That might be a little bit harsh. I've seen some people say they're going to do higher than that. If Tristan's watching, a Swansea fan that I know, he might be a bit angry at me there. The style of play at Swansea is the main talking point, because the way they play football is very, very passive and slow and arguably quite boring. And from whenever I have seen Swansea, they haven't really got any other style, and that can backfire on you quite a lot. Not like Steve Bruce, but I don't think Russell Martin is the greatest manager in the division. He's not a bad manager, but let's just say if he was a manager of my team, I wouldn't be that convinced. Joining them in mid-table, in my opinion, will be Stoke City. Honestly, again, lots of people I've seen put them like 8, which I don't understand, because quite frankly, Stoke are starting to become what they were in the Premier League. Stinking the place out, boring, not really any kind of philosophy. And I'm sorry, I don't rate Michael O'Neill as a manager. He's been there 3-4 seasons now. 3 seasons, I think, actually. And what's he actually doing? Their goal, ultimately, is to try and get back to the Premier League. They were there for a long time, and they haven't even really got close to getting even the top 6. And the really bad thing about that is when you look at the Stoke team and the Stoke players that they've had during Michael O'Neill's tenure, they are arguably good enough to get the top 6, or at least challenge for it. And every single year, even if it looks like he is challenging for it, they drop off and they finish 14th. And I don't see it changing. Another team that can go in the playoffs, definitely, in my opinion, Sheffield United. Unbelievably unlucky not to get promoted, really, in my opinion, because a bit like Forest, who both started very, very slowly, caught up, and one of us was always going to miss out, and it was Sheffield United. And, I could go on about this game for a very, very long time, but the second leg of that playoff game, that second half, is the most intense match I have ever witnessed in person or just watching it on TV, because the way Sheffield United attacked us was genuinely scary. And they are going to need a few strikers, because ultimately I don't think Ollie McBurney or Ryan Brewster are good enough. They're not exactly what you call prolific. At least Musa is definitely surplus to requirements, and as fantastic as Billy Sharp is, he is 36, so they're going to need another striker, and ultimately they're going to need to try and replace Morgan Gibbs-White's presence, and that's a gigantic hole to fill, of course. Another team mid-table, Bristol City. I was very, very close to swapping Bristol with one of Hull or Sunderland, but I don't know. I just think they will have enough to get mid-table. It'll just be more of the same, essentially. The manager has been there for quite a while and not really made much of an impact. He hasn't been there as long as O'Neill, but ultimately they haven't actually gone any further forward at all since he's been there in Nigel Pearson. And ultimately, I just think they are incredibly stale and boring. Rotherham, what a surprise. They're going to be in the relegation zone. More the same, really. Just they'll come close to surviving, and then they'll ultimately get relegated. I don't see it changing, quite frankly. They've got rid of Michael Smith. He's gone to Sheffield Wednesday, which is a big loss, but they have replaced him with Connor Washington and Tom Eaves, which is a fantastic replacement. It would be nice, just for the sake of the cycle ending, that they would stay up, but I don't think they will. One more team in the playoffs then, Watford. Again, not necessarily in order. They might be higher than 6th, which is essentially what that is, but ultimately I am really, really curious to know how they're going to do with their new manager. Yes, shock, new manager. Normally that wouldn't really be an issue because it's what they normally do, but they've got basically a guy that was, not basically, he was in League 2 last season. Is that really going to be good enough? And the fact that they went behind his old club's back in Forest Green Rovers and he didn't even confer with Forest Green either is incredibly poor and incredibly unprofessional. The next team up then, Millwall, I think they'll get, again, just near the playoffs. They ended last season very, very strongly, getting in Zion Fleming and George Honeyman at great signings. Obviously, Fleming nearly came to Forest last season, actually. And Charlie Cresswell, I really like that signing on loan from Leeds, getting in Berwick permanently as well. They're doing some good business, and they're a pretty well-run club, really, on and off the pitch. So I don't think they'll get the top 6, but I think they'll be near it, to be honest. I really do. And yeah, fair play to them. It feels weird predicting this team higher than just 15th, but Preston, they'll make at least top 10, top 12 at the very least. I mean, this category says 12, but I think they'll be higher than that. Preston, under Ryan Lowe, I think they have actually got a chance of just being not mediocre mid-table. But ultimately, I do think they're still a way off being like, a playoff level side. Getting in Freddie Woodman is a fantastic replacement for Daniel Iverson, who was so good last season. Robbie Brady and Ben Woodburn have also come in. It would be nice to see if Robbie Brady can stay fit or not for the rest of the season or the whole season. I think overall the mood at Deep Dead is pretty positive. And the final team, obviously going to go in surviving, is Wigan Athletic. It is genuinely fantastic to see them back up after they got relegated in a horrific way. They comfortably survived normally, but that minus 12 point deduction was too much for them. And ultimately, this is the thing, right? They're not the Wigan of when they were last in the Championship. They are basically a completely different side. In 2 seasons, they have done a remarkable job at rebuilding that team, because that team was totally different when they were last in the Championship. And now, it's pretty young. There's a lot of experience in there as well. It's weird, really, because I think Hull, Wigan and Sunderland have a chance of being higher than where I put them. But we're going to play it safe for now. I do think Sunderland and Wigan actually do have a very, very good chance of staying up and doing something more than just surviving, to be honest. But ultimately, we'll have to wait and see. So that is my Championship predictions, early Championship predictions. I will be doing a final version of this probably like a day before the season starts, which is at the end of this month. Looking forward to doing that. Of course, a Premier League version of it will be coming as well. Let me know what you think of my predictions in the comments below. Don't crucify me if you don't agree with it all. It's very, very difficult to do this. Let me know your predictions as well. And yeah, more videos on the way, everyone. I'm really excited and happy to be back making regular content on YouTube. So yeah, stay tuned, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon, everyone.